I've got to hit my own consent there. There we go. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome for what is my first ever virtual open day talk. I'm delighted you've been able to come along and looking forward to spending the next few minutes sharing with you a little bit about my discipline. My name's Connie. I've got a background in medical education and I'm director of something called the Interactive Studies Unit. And that's the team broadly responsible for the teaching and testing of communication and professional development during the course of your MBCHB and indeed the other healthcare programmes. My other hat is the international elective. Some of you may be familiar with that. That's a big block later in the clinical years where students go all over the world to experience healthcare in different settings. But today I'm talking about my real passion and where my own career started in terms of clinical communication as a subject. Some of you may recognise this image, some of you not. I've put it in perhaps for a little bit of fun with my tongue slightly in my cheek. This is a well-known UK comedienne and one of her characters has the catchphrase, "Am I bothered?" and frequently says, "I ain't bothered." And I put this up really because during the course of many, many years of teaching communication, a lot of people have come back and said, well, is this something we really need to bother about teaching? Surely when we recruit from sixth forms, we're recruiting the brightest and best students in the country, and they're all really good socially at communicating, interacting with each other, talking. Do we really need to bother about teaching them? Well, I wonder what you think about that. In terms of teaching communication and interactions at medical school, should we bother? I can't see your chat function on my view, but Georgina's monitoring it, and I'll be interested at the end to see if a few of you thought yes or no at this juncture. We think really there are lots of good reasons to be bothered. I expect you've thought of a few yourself. It's really important, it's fundamental. This isn't about a few niceties, a bit of chit-chat, some small talk to make people feel at ease. Communication is a fundamental instrument for keeping you and your patients safe. If you've got any further comments that you want to add, please do. And my chat function has now come up, so I should be able to get that as we go along. Clinical communication is taught not just on the MBCHB. We started doing that, 1991, I started doing communication for this programme. But it's taught across dentistry, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, physician associate programmes, psychology, health and social care. It is really important. Numbers of you may have been thinking when I gave that opening statement about, yes, the doctor-patient relationship. Many of you I expect have been drawn to this talk today, drawn to a medical degree, precisely because you're curious about people, you want to engage with patients, you want to run consultations that will help you be a bit of a diagnostic detective and then work with them through that relationship to try and make things better. And yes, the doctor-patient relationship is going to be at the heart of what you study if you join us next year. But there are some other areas of communication that are important and interesting. And culturally, in the current climate, lots of areas that we need to stay on top of that are having emerging and increasing importance. I wonder what's in your mind as I say that that's important other than the traditional doctor-patient relationship. Because I'm going to touch on one or two things that we're building into the curriculum right now to try and keep us more up to date. Professionalism is going to be the big thing at the heart of the programme if you come to Birmingham, and I mightily hope that you do. We don't teach communication at Birmingham as a separate set of communication skills lectures. That's really a bit old-fashioned. That's how people thought about things back in the 1990s. We think about professionalism. So communication is part of developing as a professional. So while, yes, we will touch on skills in the first year, we will think about important skills that you need. Not using jargon, demonstrating empathy, active listening, the sort of things that you'd associate as being the tools of communication. Those are really just a small part of a package that's actually rooted in professionalism. So the first question we're going to ask you, if you come to Birmingham, is what sort of doctor do you want to be? That's the key question that you need to think about. And then once you've got a few ideas about that in mind, what do you need to do to get there? And that's where me and my team come in to help you on the way. There's a picture there from the Lancashire Evening Post of a messy desk. Why has she put a picture of a messy desk in this lecture, you may ask yourselves. And it's actually a small example of how important professionalism is to many, many things. It might seem a bit trivial. Well, okay, the doctor's got a really messy desk. Does it matter? You know what? It does. We know that there's slight sense of disorganisation, inability to prioritise, finding things at the last minute. Those sort of things are early warning signs with students that they may have organisational difficulties later. If your desk's poorly structured, your thinking can be too. And for taking structured histories and keeping people safe, that's important. I'll come back to my first slide. You know, you all know somebody that maybe is just about on time, the person that rushes in at the last minute and just makes it. Or the person in your group at school or in your social group that's always just a little bit late, just a minute or two. Are we bothered? Actually, yes, we are. If you think about how that message communicates to your team, the person that's always slightly late may always have a good reason. The bus was late, my alarm clock didn't go off, I had to take a phone call. But actually the message you're giving everybody else is that you think your time is more important than theirs. And on a medical course and in a clinical environment, that's not a good professional message to give. When we talk about communication, yes, we're going to talk about verbal, non-verbal interaction, situation management, but we're also going to talk about how you present yourself, how you come across as a future doctor. And that'll involve aspects of your organisation and self-presentation too. So I'll move on from the messy desk, but it's something to think about. And I want to talk to you about teams. Some of you may be sports fans out there, some of you not. I was never very good at sports at school, but I do like a bit of athletics, which is why I've chosen this particular image. I'm going to make an educated guess, I could be wrong, that wherever you're watching from in the world today, you will have a National Olympics team. And if you didn't watch it, you will certainly have heard of them. And I want to use that as a little bit of a metaphor for communication and personal professional development. The lovely lady there, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, when she goes out in an individual event, she will not be going out aiming to just about do okay. She'll go out there aiming on the day to be the very best she can be. She'll do everything that's asked of her and then dig deep for the discretional effort. Yeah, she could probably easily skip a bit of training and romp home in 7th or 8th place, but that's not what she's looking for. Every single occasion she'll want to be the best she can be. And that's what we expect from our students and doctors. No one wants their doctor to be the one that put in just enough effort to just about do okay. But medicine is arguably a team sport. There's Team GB there. And again, as I say, wherever you are in the world, you will have national teams. And they represent their brand, they represent their country. And in the same way, our medical students and doctors represent the organisation, they represent their medical school, they represent the NHS. And there's an expectation about the way that they communicate and present themselves that goes with that responsibility. Some things in medicine are about your individual communication, your courage, your confidence, your own interactions. Some of your safety, your professionalism is tied in with how you interact as part of the team. Good team saves lives. Here's one from Birmingham, our world-class Royal Orthopaedic Hospital, which is where our students, if you join us, you will have placements in the future. They've saved a lot of lives there and done an awful lot of good in terms of changing people's quality of life. And yes, there's individual effort there, but they work and communicate as a team. Now, one of the people in that photograph, I don't know which one, within the hierarchy may be more senior than another. And yes, hierarchy in healthcare is important. You look to the person at the top to communicate the directions, to communicate the decisions, to take the lead. But you're also going to hear a very important term in your communication training, followership. Leading and following are both important. The good leader needs to listen to the person who may not be the most senior in the team. What if you as the student are observing a procedure or ward round and you spot something everybody else has missed? You need permission, and we give you that, to communicate upwards. And we want our clinical leaders to understand that although they're the most senior on paper, they need to follow and listen if somebody else on the team has a good idea. So our communication teaching ties all this together for you. Right, social media. You will have grown up in an era where social media is key, and you'll be native to this in a way that me and my colleagues perhaps are not. And it's marvellous. I mean, particularly during lockdown, the benefits that social media has given, the connectivity, breaking isolation, enabling people to set up social and professional groups. I've learned a lot. It's been a big learning curve for me. But there are some dangers inherent in that for healthcare students. Have a look at those three on the board. They actually relate to situations I've come across during my career, but I've obviously changed the details and anonymised them for reasons of professional ethics. Have a quick look. Now, what you might be thinking is, it's okay, these are private messages. If I send that to my mate late at night, or I send that to my brother late at night, does it matter? Is anyone going to be bothered? Well, actually, you might feel safe, but the problem we have with social media is, even if you think your settings are safe, often they're not. And whereas a conversation might not be recorded in your parents' era or your guardian's era, these things are out there for a very long time now, and they leave a footprint that can follow you for a very long time. What about the student that's had the best night ever, singing their heart out at karaoke and making new friends on the way? What about that? Look at the message. The student's concern seems to be not getting caught. That seems to be the message there. It's not about going into an anatomy environment potentially not awake or astute enough to function safely in that environment. I hope I don't get spotted. I hope I don't get caught out. That's showing an attitude, and actually quite a difficult and dangerous one. If a doctor makes a mistake, they need to be able to own it. So that's an early indication that this student's about, yeah, I'll behave badly, but as long as I don't get caught, it's probably okay. It's not. And what about the orange bubble there? Our lady on ward 6 with the very ulcerated leg. It's okay, isn't it? It's anonymous. She's not named. What do you think? Actually, it's not okay. If we've only got one lady with an ulcer on ward 6, you've identified her. And actually, anonymity aside, is social media the time and place to address a personal reaction to a clinical scenario? Perhaps for that student it was uncomfortable. Perhaps they found themselves finding the consultation difficult, not knowing what to say, felt very uncomfortable with what they saw. But there are other, better, more professional ways of managing that reaction. And my last one there, in consciousness of time. Okay, that might be funny, but is it? Do we want future medical students to think that a fall, a trip is something amusing? And you're in A&E, what if you've inadvertently captured a member of staff, another student, or, oh gosh, a patient in the background to your footage, and that's now out there, that video's out there. I don't want to spoil your fun. I want you to have fun while you're an undergraduate. Goodness knows I did. But I also want students to be mindful of some of the dangers and cautions inherent in social communication. And these again are things we'll pick up with on the course and help you with. I'm not going to spend more than 10 seconds on governance. You're all going to be looking at this via interview. You're all going to be looking at outcomes for graduates, I hope. And you will see that the old model of the doctor as a scientist, a scholar, a practitioner, a communicator has been turned on its head, and communication and values are right at the top of everything the GMC requires. It's not just an add-on for nicety, it's fundamental. If doctors don't communicate well, they're not safe. If a patient's embarrassed to talk to you, they won't come back next time. If a patient feels intimidated by the system or judged by the system, next time they've got a lump or bump, they might think twice about coming in, and your chances of quick and early diagnosis are gone. If the patient doesn't understand the instructions you're giving them, they're not going to be able to follow them safely. Communication is the tool that keeps you safe, and I'm going to keep repeating that message for the whole 5 years you're with us. So how do we teach it? Well, a lot of simulation, a lot of role play. We've got a very well-established in-house team of professional simulators. Some of them have been with me for 20 or 30 years, and they are trained to take the roles of patients, carers, advocates, colleagues, and others in scenarios so that you can practice safely. Not because we're short of patients. We have access to thousands of patients, and you will spend far more time observing and taking part in authentic consultations than in the classroom with my team doing structured role plays. So this isn't a substitute, it's preparation for. Think about aviation. This is where we get our simulation model from. How many of you would like to go in a plane to visit friends or family abroad, or to go on a holiday if the first time the pilot was flying live was the first time that they had had their hands on those controls and practiced a difficult situation? Pilots practice on the ground to be safe when they go up. So our role play situations look at challenging situations, interactions with patients, carers and colleagues, so that you can try things, make mistakes safely, get individual feedback, and work in a group to problem solve. I'm going to give you one example before we part of how we do that. And it's all a values-based approach. I've mentioned that already. So we're not just talking about skills. Remember to make eye contact, look at the patient, put the chairs at a good angle. It's way more complex than that. And we do work in the first year with live role players, and we're working on virtual platforms if we have some COVID restrictions when you come and join us, but we will be working with live role players. And we also have other methods that we use, such as this one. So here's a 2-minute taster from a session that we do with the current students in the early years. And we use a series of video diaries. There's a range of characters. Here's photographs of 2, Janko and Tatiana. And we position it to our students that these 2 young people have hit a difficult time in their lives and had a medical problem. And we filmed a series of video diaries that our students can watch, and then we ask them questions based on those recorded video diaries. I'm not going to show you the video diaries because we don't have time, but I'm going to give you a quick excerpt, which is a typed up version of a line that Janko says in his first video diary. And there it is, so take a quick moment to look at that. It was all a bit of a shock, really. 1 minute I was on the treadmill in the gym, next I was on the floor. I woke up in accident and emergency. Don't know what happened. I mean, I thought it was safe. I bought these pills on the internet, and well, all my mates used them. I wanted to beef up a bit, you know, I wanted results fast. So the students see Janko saying that line a few days after his experience. And then early in the teaching, we say to them, if you were Janko's doctor or another member of the healthcare team working with him, what would you want to think about or know? What are the issues just based on those few seconds of dialogue? I'd quite like you to type a couple in because I'd quite like to have a look at them afterwards, or ask my colleague to share them with me after this. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. You're part of the healthcare team working with Janko going forward. You've just heard him say that. What's important? Let's see if I can see that. I've spotted your questions. They're very good. I will address them afterwards. Okay, so you've had a chance to think about our character there, and you've had a chance to think about some of the issues just briefly. But the sort of things that came up with my first year group this time round, they wanted to talk about or were curious about what happened clinically. What was it that had actually happened that had caused him to collapse? What was the situation around it? How did the referrals work? Who called the ambulance? What did the ambulance crew see? What would we want to know from them when he was admitted to frontline? Pre-hospital trauma, an important question. When he arrived there, what state was he in? And who met him? Who communicated with him? What was that conversation about? Have a look at some of the other issues here. Peer pressure, confidence, body image. Very telling, I wanted results fast, you know. This may be a young man that's aware that diet and exercise could manage some of his body issue concerns, but the amount of time it took was too slow. Why does he need results quickly? What's the pressure point? What's the pain point here? Why has he risked taking these tablets to get results fast? We need to talk to him and find out how he feels about himself and what's going on in his peer group. There you have lay referral. He bought a tablet on the advice of a friend. Unlicensed prescribing over the internet. Gosh, young men like him, young women like Tatiana can buy a tablet at the push of a button. There's nobody there taking their medical history or looking at what else they might be taking that drug might interact with. Did he read the instructions? If not, why not? Is there something about written communication on drugs that stops young patients working with that? Does he need extra support? Are there other problems? Is he at college? Is he at home? Does he have other support? What's going on for him? There's a lot of big conversations, and me and my students can easily have an hour-long discussion based on that 30-second narrative. And then later on in the course, we build up role plays and you get to work live with role players. Oh, my screen's jammed. Give me a second. I'm not quite sure why I can't move that. Oh, there we go. My final slide. I'm going to say a word about COVID. It's impossible not to. This is the first time in many, many years that I've not been able to sit on a table and have the pleasure of meeting you and your families, friends and supporters face to face. COVID is changing the environment, not just for now, but the healthcare environment that you're going to be going into. We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe on the course, and we're planning contingencies for pretty much every aspect of our learning. We're not going to be maverick about this, but the reality is you're going to be going out and interacting and communicating in a world where COVID exists. We can't pretend it doesn't, and even if we manage to control this very well in the coming years, it's going to be something that stays with us. In terms of my discipline, that's meaning a lot of rethinking about what we're teaching you. We've always known virtual consulting is important. It's going to take centre stage in a way it never has done before. So we're working now, creating packages and training experiences, authentic and simulated for you to manage that. Crisis brings opportunity. Yes, patients are being seen more online than they ever were before because of lockdown, because of shielding. But what about very positive in other ways? Patients who live on remote islands that don't have easy access to healthcare, patients who aren't mobile, patients who feel vulnerable and don't want to go into hospital environments for checkups where they think that they may catch something. There's lots of exciting stuff going on behind the scenes, and we're going to navigate our way through that as best we can. We have contingencies in place for communication that are to deliberately teach you remote consulting, remote alternatives to face-to-face if we hit periods where it's just not safe for any of us to leave the bedroom, but also a whole range and suite of offers, including our traditional face-to-face teaching, that we hope to be able to reintroduce to the programme going forward. We're going to work with you on this, and I'm consulting students at the moment about what they would find reasonable, helpful and useful. I'm going to leave you, because I've done 25 minutes, I'm going to leave you with a quote from a book you may have read, Adam Kay's Diaries of a Junior Doctor. Sometimes they're hilarious, they're painful, they're very thought-provoking. He wrote them a few years ago now, so the junior doctor system has changed in terms of working hours directives a little, but a lot of the heart of what he's talked about is very relevant. That quote stayed with me long after I'd read the book. A great doctor must have a huge heart and a distended aorta through which pumps a vast lake of compassion and human kindness. Thank you for listening.